Namaste. It's nice to have a one time where it's different. All right, welcome. And how are we doing on the remote?
39.
39. You guys, physical embodiment is not in full showing as much as virtual. All right, so welcome everyone. I guess this is our first public satsang since we've come back. We did the World Peace Meditation Intervention. Some of you may have joined us. And we have an intensive coming up this Saturday. And I want to do kind of a warm-up to where we're going with this. You know, there's Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, right?
David Hawkins.
Power of Now is Eckhart Tolle. Yeah.
Got it.
Sorry. Careful.
But David Hawkins has the power of
Power versus force.
force.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about Saturday the power of intent. So it's really a matter of power. Where does it come from? You know, there is a principle of that thing we call power, which we actually awaken to when we awaken. And there is this quality of immediacy that occurs, as if we come into existence in a way that our human diminished structures of compensation haven't allowed us. And we actualize, we come into relationship with a power more than our own. So now, the nature of this power is something different than what we know of as human power or human force. It's a quality that arises from the truth of what we are. When we begin to awaken to this power, then simultaneously the old compensating structures that we took on as human egos to come into relationship with more power, more feeling okay about ourselves, feeling like being able to compensate for our diminishments and our shame and our stories that keep us in a negative, diminished relationship with ourselves. We end up discovering that those are no longer relevant. The nature of awakening, when we awaken more, is that simultaneously there's a falling away of the compensating structures of the egoic struggle to come into existence, to preserve its identity, to validate itself. So there's a weakening of those constrictions. And when they do weaken, that truer power, that truer authority grows. And what happens with that, the quality of what we become, is ultimately what the spiritual path is about, is moving into relationship with that principle of consciousness that has been living us all along, that we've been unconscious or asleep to. And in the process, discover, over time, a truer authority, a truer capacity to come into existence. Now, initially, when awakening happens, there is this compulsion, pull, to be able to know that more and more and more. Second, and also simultaneously with that, to shed those things that prevent us from awakening to that more and more. And it's not just conscious. It is often a byproduct of a greater truth, automatically making the lesser truths associated with our ego and our adaptation less important. They begin to lose their authority. When we awaken, the quality that we become more and more is that original condition of consciousness. That capacity to be aware, to know, to learn, to experience, to discern more and more accurately the nature of ourselves and existence, to step out of the little narrow box that our compensating ego came with and starting moving into a larger relationship with the underlying principles of existence. And with that comes this capacity to bring into existence something out of nothing. The condition of that nothing is simply not yet manifest. That which is a potential, but not yet defined, not yet quite a possibility, little less actualizing. This sense of the potential, this sense of the immediacy of existence merged together with this recognition of the opportunity that existence is for you. This sense of stepping into a new way of being. A sense of something else living you greater than what you've known yourself to be, which is actually more you than what you knew before. This expanded capacity to imagine or create or sense possibilities that have yet to unfold. And one of the arenas it works in is with ourselves, where we can begin to recognize the parts of ourselves that have not been able to let go or open up in order for something greater to come. So if you look at this, if you look at the nature of your own spiritual seeking, the quality of wanting more of that is actually creating an intent. You could say a prayer for that which is needed to show up in the space of your attention, in the space of your day-to-day life, that will reveal what's in the way and what's aligned. Reveals that what's in the way to the further expansion of the sense possibility of what you are, and to also grow more and more into alignment with the unfolding of that possibility within yourself. So this is the power of intent. Now, in fact, spiritual awakening simply makes us conscious of the original intent that is the foundation of all existence, that came out of that unmanifest potentiality of the Sat, of that principle of the absolute prior to existence. That inherent in that quality was this will to know itself, to will to exist, the will to be, the will to discover its own existence. And it's out of that intent that everything we know came into existence. Everything in all dimensions, but especially even in this dimension. And this manifesting of possibility from an unspeakable light into the darkness is reflected in our own solar system. We could turn off the light in this solar system and the solar system would die. If we turned off the sun, that'd be it. That would be it for the opportunity of this collection of bodies. That the sun as an allegory of an expression of that original intent is a self-engaged unfolding of a potentiality as heat and light and force into existence. And we are all, everything that lives, everything in the creation is a byproduct of that movement. The life that the sun brings to this planet has created the bodies we inhabit, created the food that allows us to sustain ourselves as we live, sustain the atmosphere, the climate, all of this. It's all from one source. And when we live aligned with that, means we discover how it works. We discover how light becomes a force called electricity, how to mobilize that So it's the same thing when we begin to align ourselves with the original intent. We begin to discover how it works. What are its principles? What is that radiant thing that's awakening in you? What is that principle of existence that's becoming more available? And with that, because inherent in this unfolding of the intent is a will and an intelligence that is looking to discover the nature of its own existence and the nature of the existence itself. So really, we living in the intent of the original manifestation of the creation that came from the thought into existence. We are also living the intent of our parents to have children. We are also living the intent that they inherited from their parents. I got passed to you, that I want my child to be this or that. And we inherited the intent of the atmosphere that we were born into. We inherited the intent of our culture, of the values, the beliefs of those around us. So in fact, this principle of coming into existence through an intent, bringing something into existence that hasn't been yet fully manifest, has actually is going on continuously everywhere. But when we awaken, we have this capacity to align with a greater intent than those that shaped our sense of self, than those that shaped what was possible for us. And we begin in the process also, we discover how these intents that we took on from our parents and our culture and the people around us, what people expected of us, you could say another way of languaging that, or what they demanded of us is another way of languaging that they lose their relevancy. And you begin to discover your ability to create with greater and greater freedom, and to be more and more effective in manifesting this awakened intent that you've become and are becoming. So I've given an expression of this in the past. It's a prayer. Please show me that which I do not yet know that separates me from you. Okay? What is that prayer? That's not saying fix me, help me. It's saying show me what I need to know or see that will allow me to come to you. To allow me to see what I am doing that's separating me from you. What am I believing or hanging on to, or that I valued in the past, that I made important in the past, that's separating me from you. See, the quality of this, if you look at the nature of that prayer and where that prayer arises in us, it's our aspiration. It's our longing to return to that we already know we are, but have not been able to access. It's the original intent itself. As a fire, as a radiance, as the sun sends out the radiance of its heat and light, it's that radiance waking up in us as a current of becoming, a current of coming into existence to manifest the potentiality that lies inherent, that's already here, not yet recognized, not yet actualized. And what can you do with this? You can do very many practical things. You can create spiritual organizations out of nothing. You can start setting in motion a structure of unfolding, of a possibility for a new, truly sustainable future for mankind. You can open up the possibility of human beings learning how to integrate spirit into their lived human lives out of nothing. out of no evidence. Only this inherent recognition of the innate power that we have available to us to bring in new realities, new possibilities for existence. First, of course, for ourselves, but then for anywhere we attend to that's relevant for the unfolding of this possibility. The more you act aligned with the unfolding of that possibility, the more tangible is the force. The more tangible is the sense of immediacy, of access. It's no longer you doing something to have it happen a certain way. It's you in the process of discovery, what it is that's already there that's trying to happen. See, that's the power of intent. We carry it. If you're just willing to open up to having the universe show you what separates you from that divine reality you are. So that's what the intensive is about. It's about actually discovering what we would say is your true authority, the one that draws its basis on the very original principle that brought this existence into the creation and brought this existence into being, but also what brought us into being, brought our parents into being, brought children, brought dogs and birds and airplanes and all these things into being. But it's all been for our enjoyment. It's all been so that we can fulfill the purpose of the sought to come into existence and to enjoy its existence. So when we are doing that, then there's no part of this existence that isn't part of the fullness and the delight and the joy of being. So our imagination may have troubles with this. Maybe that's why you got to talk to a guy like me. So you can begin to get a sense of that, but it's going on everywhere. I mean, this whole new tech world, this whole thing of the internet, I mean, it's all creations coming out of a sense of possibility that someone that opened up for someone who was awakened enough to be able to receive that inherent purpose through themselves into existence. That is to unfold a higher and greater and more perfect expression in matter of those fundamental divine principles that are the foundation of this existence. And I won't go into all that. That's part of the program. Okay, so I thought I would open up to some of you in the room or some of you remotely and see if you would like to share something or to ask questions, whatever is there. Yeah, okay, come forward. All right, introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Maggie. Hello. Oh boy. It's really interesting that you're talking about this tonight. As I've aligned myself with that prayer and really given myself over, I feel like I'm just more exposed to the universe.
Evidence, guys. It's not particularly comfortable.
No, it's extremely uncomfortable. Hard to know what's real and what's not real.
Is there not a prayer that that distinction becomes revealed to you? Would that
It
not
might just
it?
be at a peak right now, but no, not lately.
So it's useful to set an intent that strengthens your ability, that allows you to get clearer about what is aligned and what is not in yourself and in the world you're creating for yourself. You don't have to do this, by the way. When you set an intent, you create a space for something to show up in your consciousness that you wouldn't make happen. See, it's very different than how egos create things, right? You struggle, you got an idea, maybe you expand the idea and you keep trying to make it happen. But this comes from something else. It comes from a showing, an opening up of what's possible with you holding the space of attention for that. And that's a very important concept, the idea of aligning our attention so we can pay attention.
Yeah.
So that we can recognize those moments in life that are really, no matter how we might think they are initially, usually bad news, are really to reveal to us what it is we have not been able to be in relationship with, that's separating us from the aspiration that lives us. So, it can be a prayer. Please show me what it is I can't see.
Yeah.
You could also have the prayer, please have me pay attention when it does show up.
Make it clear.
Well, I mean, coming here was basically creating that space.
Absolutely, and that's what I want you to be in touch with.
And then while I'm here, I'm doing all the self-inquiries, from the handouts. And
Okay.
so, but when I do that is when I'm most sort of feel bombarded by these
Parts of yourself.
forces. And then maybe they are internal, maybe they're external. I think it's a mix. But it's,
Okay.
and so for me, the authority, the inner authority, the divine authority, it's like I just can't,
Find
it's
it.
like nowhere land. It's
Got
just
it.
unraveled. Even in the meditation, I just couldn't pull myself out of the stupor.
It's not truly a stupor. It's like the ocean becomes turbulent when it hits the shore. When you leave the land and you go into the ocean, the first part is turbulent. You can be thrown back, you can be sucked into undertows. There's this process. It's not until you get out to the deeper ocean. So the secret of that is keep swimming. So the secret of going through the turbulence is not to let the turbulence interfere with the intent.
Right.
So you've got that. I know you've got that, Maggie. So the more we do that, the stronger we get. The more we're be patient with ourselves. Give ourselves a break. It's not something that you can learn all at once. You graduate from grammar school and go into high school. You can't expect to be a senior right all at once. You have to be able to allow for it to unfold. And meanwhile, you continue to take actions aligned with your intent. You continue, especially in the space you have right now, to stay in the prayer. But it will help your system if you use the grounding cord.
Yeah, which I do.
Okay, and do that every time before you sit. And bring in your aura,
Right.
clean out the system, because then the part of you that has always been open and vulnerable to subtle plane influences and the energies of other people will be removed, and then there'll only be you there. Then when you do your meditation, it is you being there. And that's probably the start of the meditation.
Yeah,
Yes.
and yeah. It has, at times it works.
Okay, well, practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
That's why they call it yoga. You got to work at it till it gets real, then you don't have to work at it. So when we start developing new behaviors that are different than the ones that shaped our old intents, then there's a shedding process because we've kept them in motion for so long, the course of the years we've lived. So they're spinning and we've kept that momentum going. So when they're no longer serving us, when we're not even acting on them anymore, it takes a while for them to unwind. It can take years, actually, for it to unwind. So you got to give yourself a break. You got to have patience. and keep the attention on your purpose. And then more and more, the immediacy of what you are and the sacredness of the actions that you do take become stronger and clearer for you. So, there's not a path. You will create the path. So you can't know.
Right.
You can only look behind you and see the trail.
Right.
After a while, there'll be enough of a momentum that you can kind of get a guess of what's next. But the idea of shedding the old so that you have space for the new is emptying the cup of what it is that's already conditioned you so that there can be space for that greater expression of your awakened self coming into your life, coming into your attention, becoming available to you as a means of coming into existence, because it's a different set of principles than what ego does. Ego takes action, applies effort, and so on and so forth. Although these principles, as human beings, as we develop on the path of our own awakening, become the means by which we can manifest what comes to us and bring our greater realization and manifest it in the world. So you don't want to throw these out with the bathwater. The things that you've been able to do, Maggie, in the course of creating the life that you wanted previously, is that set of skills, those wisdoms, those capacities, you'll bring here, but maybe not at first. It'll be simply having faith. Having faith in the thing that is having you be here. To stay in touch with that aspiration that you carry. And that longing for that greater truth.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is also just showing me that I have resistance to being in authority in the old.
Good point. That's a great realization. We are our own worst enemy.
So, I feel it, and I can do the exercises. I guess I'm wondering if that structure needs more than just that process.
All you need is patience. This is a very simple path.
Yeah.
Wake up each morning, carry water, cut wood,
Yeah.
meditate, do the program, wake up the next morning, do the same thing. So the more simple. Keep bringing yourself to simple. Because when you're simple, your palate is clean. Your consciousness is more open. And when the universe shows you what's next, you're there to get it. Now, it'll take more time. You need to know people in the community. You need to get more invested. Then you get activated. Then you discover in those processes really what it is that's remaining. That's the opportunity of the residential program. It becomes a cauldron in which your intent can become an arena of your own battlefield. And that is where we grow.
But I don't feel particularly perturbed by any. I feel bothered by universal conflict and
Then
discord and divine forces.
Maggie, so this is very common to your generation, is that you're actually collected to the universal struggle that's going on right now. So for now, you should just put that aside. You have no responsibility at this point. Your only responsibility is to become a more capable channel and instrument yourself.
Yeah.
Because that will put you in a position where you don't have any authority, where you don't have enough power.
Well, that's exactly where I am.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then throws you into that ego pattern of no power, no ability to change things, the hopelessness and the helplessness. And then you go into despair. That doesn't serve you. You can't eat the elephant in one bite. You have to eat it in small bites, proportional to your capacity to chew, swallow, and digest, and pass it. So you got to deal with this. And for you right now, although I speak of it, you are in the most favorable place you can be for becoming more useful in this that has motivated you all along. You've come here for the earth. You come here for the mother. So then just be simple, trust the opportunity, and the universe will take over what was rightly its own in the first place.
Okay.
Okay. And just be loved. Let love in. Let the fact that you're in the right place at the right time for you. So what is your tent right now? See? Discover, what is the intent you're holding right now? Ah, man.
Oh,
Introduce yourself.
I'm Ann. Who doesn't know Ann? The
I
hot
don't know.
seat hog.
I got 40 people on the camera.
I can't be overly articulate about what I want to say because I
Okay.
just got clear on something this morning.
Ah,
But it's an evolution that I can easily trace back to the hot seat where I asked if I could start a conversation in New Dharma about the people in the community being kind of foot soldiers. And you said no. And you gave reasons, which I had heard before, and I understood on a strictly intellectual level. And then manifesting divine was helpful in making that more clear. And I began to settle down. And the only thing I want to say right now, just because I think it's useful, and it's something I need to keep working with, is that I read in David Hawkins' book, I get David Hawkins on the brain clearly. Can't think about Eckhart Tolle
Dave.
because David Hawkins is on the brain. It's in Eye of the Eye.
uh-huh.
I can't get overly sucked into that book, but I hit a section this morning called positionality. And boy, do I see that my desire to start a conversation in New Dharma about all of us being environmental foot soldiers is position. It comes from positionality. And
It comes not just that, it comes from a true intent that was older. That came from a less awakened state. And we organized ourselves to the highest intent available to us as we unfold as human beings. And we may be conscious of doing that or not. So I know when I started architecture, I had an intent that I didn't know until I actually did it for some years. So the principle of it is an intent always is something you sense but do not yet know that you're taking actions aligned with, and you're attending to what are the opportunities for that to happen. So you've been doing that, and you've been doing it in the way you could, and you've organized yourself around that. But what your ego did with it is made it into a position. And that's true on the spiritual path, where you'll come to a certain point and you think that's it. And then you take a station there. That becomes your new ego position, much improved from the previous ego position. And it's useful and necessary to do it step by step. But it's no longer necessary, applicable. And it's also, if you are taking actions of an old intent in a new consciousness, it just won't work.
And that feels really clear to me. And the other thing that feels really clear to me is, and I just need to keep working with this, is that the positionality comes from an evaluation of rightness and wrongness.
Good.
And I really want to drop that.
Like,
Like, I really want to drop rightness and
good
wrongness.
or bad, right or wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
So that's an intent.
Good,
Yeah.
good. So then the intent is to show me where I still am invested in this being right or this not being right. Yeah. So right now. So to be able to bring yourself forward and be willing to see what it is that you do not yet see that's keeping this in place or preventing you from being able to be more perfectly aligned with that quality that's awakened in you. And it's just awakened newly, by the way. And the danger with your newly awakened consciousness is to try to understand it too quickly. To try to make an understanding, to draw too much information. Whatever David Hawkins says, whatever any other teaching, even what I say, bring it in as a possibility to hold the space for. A soup that you're stirring, to look to see what comes out of it that may be relevant, because when it does, and you're attending, it'll be resonation. It'll be, ah, yeah, that's it, I got it. Because that's the knowing you want to possess as the most important knowing, not the understanding, not the correct information, not the right information. So it's a different paradigm for coming into relationship to what you're becoming. And the old paradigm will not be sufficient and more likely will be in the way of the unfolding of that possibility, that true power that you are. Because the structures in the past was the investment our ego had in getting a payoff or to avoid a diminishment. So this comes without any reward for the old paradigm, but rather an unfolding of the possibility of what you are in existence. That isn't the who that needs to be confirmed or non-affirmed, all that little stuff in us that's still defining how life has to be or how we have to be. So the prayer would best be to know how to not know. To learn how to let understanding fall secondary. To let in, or if it comes in just in the possibility, distrusting or being wary of anything that comes prematurely that fits into your existing paradigm of understanding. Because there's an aha that comes out of understanding that's not the revelation of the possibility, but rather fits into your existing paradigm. Now it's useful when you're first starting on the spiritual path to have some understanding of what you've already known and how it fits into the new situation. So you can, the wording and the languaging and the structures become more apparent to you. But after that, they need to be put in suspension or in a potentiality like quantum dynamics, right? Where it's either a wave or a form. It's in existence or not in existence. And so they hold it in the wave form, yet not quite manifest. To be comfortable or learn to be comfortable with not knowing or not understanding. You can do that when the intent is holding all of this with a purpose. And the nature of the revelations of what separates us often will take days, weeks, months to demonstrate itself. So the willingness to be empty, the willingness to not know, but the willingness to keep taking actions that aligns us with that inner potentiality, that inner possibility that is seeking to manifest as us. So it's a whole different thing, not anything you do. That's what the Rajas wants. It wants something to do.
Well, I'm a little bit lost in what you're saying, so I'm going to have to listen to this again.
No, but you're only lost through your mind.
Yes.
So what's your heart say?
Well, I can just go straight back to the impact of what I saw this morning.
Okay.
You know, it was a kind of a somatic experience.
Great.
And like I say, I can't get sucked into much in this book, but that whole section on positionality was really useful. And what I want to do is, I don't feel like I'm attached to understanding. I feel like, if anything, I just want to drop.
To let go.
Everything. I just want to drop everything.
So drop.
Every attachment, every position, every...
So you're not going to be able to do that all at once. You can only... But the principle of having that intent to be empowered in the ability to let go, the power with the ability to be here now as it is, to tend to what's here right now. So when you had that recognition, was it through the book, through the talking about positionality, or was
Yeah.
it? Okay. And what happened
Yeah.
to your body when that happened?
It just felt like a deeper recognition.
Okay. Then that's valid. That's true. So that's
And also, there was kind of a comfort,
a relaxing.
relaxing and a comfort in the kind of the aha-ness of it.
Okay.
You know, it just felt like a really significant shift.
So these.
Not in understanding.
Yes, I understand.
In an
it.
experience.
I got it now. You
Yeah.
you said it more clearly. The aha is the ha ha ha. It's like we breathe differently. We breathe in a new way. We ha is getting into the wonder of the possibility of what just got demonstrated.
Yeah, that's what this feels like.
Okay. So
Kind of a new
Yeah.
place.
And the opportunity of that is then to expand to the structure in you that's still in positionality. And it's all pervasive. So it's something where you don't want to get overtaken when you find it, but something that you can say, there it is.
There it is again, there it is again, there it is again.
There it is, but not resting in the, boy, I'm really fucked, but rather resting in the miracle of the unfolding, which literally is all that has to happen. Remember, when we actually are able to be willing to be open to what's hidden, to our positionality, to our need to be right, our need to have it a certain way, to our defensive structures, they start dissolving in the space of us, in the space of our intent.
Well, see, that feels like what's
What's that?
been happening
Yeah.
to take me to the realization I got this morning. It kind of started with that hot seat where I asked if I could start a conversation, and there's just been exactly the kind of unfolding and opening you're talking about,
That's
which
perfect.
led to what happened this morning.
Yep.
And then there's just more to come.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's being the foot soldier.
It is for me.
Yeah. Well, it is
Yeah.
for each of us.
And it is for the intention you've set for the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what Arjuna was. The foot soldier.
Yeah. It's just a different kind of foot soldier than
No.
I've ever been before.
Yes, different kind than you've been before.
Yeah.
All right, perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. Someone else? Yes, Catherine. All right,
So-
say your name.
Oh, sorry. I'm Catherine. And I was delighted when you talked about your intent for Saturday, because that was sort of my intention in being here, was to see whatever structures I'm still allowing myself to separate me from my unbounded potential.
What a coincidence.
Amazing how that happens. So, and yet, as I was sitting and reflecting there before I came up, what I've noticed in this last phase is there's been this incredible flow that's actually been happening. It hasn't felt like struggle, clunk, suffer. You know, it hasn't.
It's more of an unfolding.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
And it's very related to the seminar in Washington, D.C., because I've had such a strong focus on being present with that energy and doing that process almost every day, and being able to be a vehicle, whatever that process is enabling me to open up to, and to be able to watch that. So it's
Yeah, very good.
it's like being in a place of wonder.
Yeah, that's the Satsang. Wow, I created this?
And just feeling different qualities of energy come in at different times, And then having started a world peace meditation group
Ah,
and seeing that, so I had 5 gatherings, right? And I initially invited 3 people through no additional effort of my own. There are now 12 people. You know, and so it's that kind of,
that beautiful example of creating, bringing intent into existence.
right.
And that's actually, you could say, the next step of this is the practicalities of how we make something of spirit manifest in matter. So now that's what you're discovering. That's what all these study groups and World Peace Meditation groups and inquiry groups are about, is you learning to discover the power of intent you carry already. But it's not for yourself, it's for the world. It's for truth consciousness to wake up in you, yes, but to serve the waking up for all the world. So in that context, the forces we begin to tap into are beyond our individual capacity, even our awakened capacity to tap into. So, perfect. So how many people? 12, did you say?
12
How often do you meet?
every 2 weeks.
All right.
Every
good.
2 weeks. So, and there's just attending to that process, you know, it'll show me, like you said, this isn't for me, right? This is just just being an instrument, but it'll make me aware of certain things, just adjustments I need to make in the process.
So the perfection.
Yeah.
So when you hold the space for the world peace, what's your experience versus when you do it on your own?
Much, much of more of a sense of a collective, you know, operating, most definitely. And the quality of the energy is stronger. And I have the experience of those of us that are present creating a vessel,
Co-creating.
co-creating a vessel, exactly.
That's exactly what happens.
Co-creating a vessel, which allows the energies to come to the group.
Very good. See what's possible when you discover the power of the intent? And then the nature of discovering this, because it's not, you don't really need to understand it. It would reveal itself when you start doing it. And in the course, it would guide you through the direct experience, what works, what doesn't work. Like if your group becomes 20 people, you'll notice a distinct difference. So there's this quantum shifts that occur depending upon the alignment, your skillfulness in holding space, the clarity of your communications, and the capacity of the people who are in the room. So there's certain factors at a practical level, spiritual science, about how this works, which is really one of the reasons I'm bringing this workshop, this intensive, into my library of intensives, because it's really what's happening now worldwide is people are learning to actualize what they've awakened to in a way that furthers and strengthens their awakening and empowers you to become more and more capable in bringing this, because that's all it is. It's an intent for the world.
Right.
It's an intent for mankind. And in that, we have to be able to tolerate that which resists the manifestation of that collective intent in our own comparable parts of ourselves. It's still resisting the manifestation of that, our own intent, of this intent. And it accelerates our ability to let go of those structures and to go beyond them, because our purpose is bigger than ourselves. So these are like the sciences. This is the applied science of this work. So good.
I have a particular question in that regard. If it's okay, what was coming up for me the last time we were doing the gathering is, so there are a couple people who've been to all 5. So there have been new people that sort of have added every time.
Word of mouth?
Word of mouth.
Yeah, good.
Word of mouth. But I also was very clearly told that that I needed to speak to each person before they came, that it wasn't sufficient just to have someone by word of mouth, because that's that person's best attempt to share what the purpose of it is, but it really needed to come from me so the person could feel it and really make a more conscious decision as to whether it was appropriate for them to give it a try or not. So that was one thing that was made very clear.
Yeah, what you've been doing up to now.
So that it happened. There was one person that was invited, and that someone knew and had a little bit of a concern that it might be too much for energetically for what that person was going through right now physically on certain planes. Interestingly enough, that person didn't come. But what it told me was, I need to make sure that I talk to people before they come so that I can share the purpose so they can really check to see if it's appropriate for them. And I can also get a sense of where they are in their life and if it feels like it's a match.
Then you just make your phone number available or do a Zoom call like you do coaching calls.
Exactly.
Right? Now, the nature of this unfolding, because it is actually true, that because some of you are carrying so much force that people who are not ready for it actually could have a harder time. But it's my experience that the universe is self-selecting. And that really you can allow people to come in and give them a chance to introduce themselves. And the three questions I say, your name, where you're from, and why are you here? And then in that, they come into the room because you're carrying the space. And then when you do that, you set the purpose. Then, because you're already in a position of authority.
Right.
So you set the purpose. And then let them go through whatever they go through. Because they wouldn't have shown up if the universe didn't feel this was next for them.
Okay. So another question I have is, we come together, so obviously because it's the World Peace Meditation, we're primarily in silence together, right? I mean, I'm describing the process, but we're not having a big interaction before or afterwards. Because the other thing I noticed is that I did create a little bit of space at the end when it was people's first experience for them to be able to just share a little so I could kind of get a sense of how that was for them. But I realized, given that new people kept coming and others were, it was their second or third time, it was starting to dissipate the energy of the field we just created. Because people were also having a challenging time trying to go from their experience back into their linear brain and translate it. It was more of a push coming from something I was trying to get versus that's something I can also do by following up with them with a call later. So it felt like it was taking away from the field to do that.
I understand. And I think as the group matures and stabilizes, then the need for the building of connection afterwards is less. But I think initially it adds greatly to the person's sense of safety if they can move into relationship. It's not so much understanding, but to be able to be in relationship with other people and you, and then have some sense of from the answers you give, how that could serve, and that's more likely to have people stay. Then maybe you get a stable group, then maybe you could open another group. And I mean, a stable group, you could stop doing that and you have another group for people that are relatively new.
Okay.
Audrey. So, Catherine, when we first did this many years ago with Bhagavan's group, we had the space before the program started. So this was like early days, but I don't think it's any different. And so that way people could bring their questions or they can email you. But what made a difference was there's a sense of community, a fellowship that gets created.
Exactly.
So you don't want to miss that.
Right. So the other thing that came to me too was, so we're inviting the Sat force in, and it's obviously coming through each one of us individually as vehicles. So that's going to create opportunities for each one of us in our life to see what's
in the way.
What's in the way,
Yeah,
right?
what's possible, yes.
So, but given most of the time we're together is in quiet, it also came to me that would it be appropriate to start a small group so that actually gives people an opportunity to share what's being opened up in their life by these gatherings.
Absolutely.
Why not?
Have an alternate week
Right.
inquiry group.
They're already coming.
So they're already coming. And then slowly bring in the Gita or the quotes of the Gita or your relationship with me or any of those things that could open up the opportunity for them.
That way I thought we could create, that more of a sense of community and give people the opportunity to be able to be present with what is happening in their life in relationship to this, because lives are so busy, oftentimes it's easy not to take a moment.
Now, you know, we have set up guidelines. Are you familiar with the guidelines for World Peace Meditation? And we have guidelines for conducting small groups. Have you been exposed to them? Do you gotten them?
The guidelines I've more experienced indirectly by being in the small groups.
Yeah. We
So-
actually have, so Sharon, I'll send Catherine the small group and the study group, both guidelines, so that I have found there's a certain way of recognizing, make the best advantage of what's unfolding. Mostly, when you're doing something like you're doing just from scratch, it's self-selecting. And because your purity of your intent, no matter what comes up, it's self-selecting. But in this way, it empowers you to be able to begin something that is the basis for something more to happen. Okay?
Yep.
Because when you bring in your relationship with me, when you bring in this force, then it really accelerates. But the idea of bringing people in gently, letting them get a feel for it, getting some sense of fellowship, which handles the trust, I actually feel that a new group, a relatively new group, should have some time either before or after to bring what happened to them before, or to share in the group, anybody who would like to stay, what has happened for them that night, until the group becomes mature.
Makes sense.
Okay?
Yep.
Good.
All right.
All right, I'm good. Thank you. I love practical questions. I mean, it's already happening, and we're done. All right, so we're gonna finish with a silent sitting. Where's my phone? Here it is. And we will see those of you who are signed up for the remote intensive then, and the rest of you here who will be here. Let me turn off my. All right, just a few minutes of silence and stillness. And let us begin. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat Shri. All glory to Supreme. May truth manifest. Namaste.